What is going on, everyone? I'm Shadell. Welcome back to Rap Talk. And today, of course, something I didn't want to talk about at all, but we have to talk about this whole back and forth that is now happening because of Joe Budden between Logic and Joe. So Logic responded on Twitter. I can't obviously play the clip that he kind of trolled Joe Budden on. I'll insert like a little image somewhere for you to go and see it. But essentially, Logic goes and trolls Joe Budden because of his recent comments. So if you're not familiar, you're like, okay, what's happening with this Logic and Joe Budden beef? How did it happen? Where is it stemming from? All that stuff. Essentially, this is about 3-4 years back when Rory and Mal were on the Joe Budden podcast, where Joe pretty much like dug into Logic, saying he was like the worst rapper to ever rap. Joe, on the most recent podcast, he has come out and said where he really didn't like Logic after he did that suicide prevention song. And I can kind of see what he means about that because that song was kind of cringy. I gotta side with Joe on that one. But the issue that I have with that Suicide Hotline song, to go off on a tangent there, was allegedly Joyner Lucas was essentially making a song like that, and he was talking to Logic about that whole concept. And allegedly, Logic went and stole that whole idea, made a song, put it out before Joyner Lucas was ever able to. So that's kind of like the backstory about that one. I'm not sure where you can find that interview where Joyner talked about that, but I remember that a couple years ago where Joyner broke down the story of that whole issue, and that song essentially should have been Joyner's. Obviously not the literal song that's out today, but Joyner's version of that song when he passed that idea over to Logic, and Logic ran with it and literally stole it, allegedly. So I say that to say, the beef between Joe Budden and Logic has been brewing for such a long time now. Now, recently, in Joe Budden's comments, where he's sitting here being like, another reason he does not like Logic is because Logic is someone that he feels like panders. Now, I literally just dropped a video about Joe Budden, and I feel like what Joe's saying, Logic is someone that panders, and they always need to find someone or something they need to pander about to people. I feel like that's Joe. I literally just made a video. I feel like Joe's kind of projecting how he feels about Logic, and it's also things that he doesn't like about himself, but he doesn't like seeing it in other people. Because I'm like, yeah, sure, all these things could be true that you're saying about Logic. Totally makes sense. But I also feel like you have some of these similar characteristics and traits. And he's sitting here on the podcast trying to analyze Logic. Have we ever seen his dad? Do we know if his dad's black? Does he have like some child trauma because he didn't have a parent in his life and all? And it's like, all right, Joe, like, I don't know why you're going so deep and hard on Logic. But the wild thing is that Joe will sit here, go hard on Logic, and he essentially hinted to having a list of people that he can go to and just, essentially poke at. And it's like, it just drives back home my video where I just feel like Joe is just, at this point, finding people to attack or try to get something out of to make his podcast more popular or drive people to the podcast, which hopefully drives people to the Patreon and all that stuff. So I kind of feel like Joe's essentially pandering, especially as I mentioned the last video about Joe with the whole Adam 22 and him not liking how Adam goes and posts clips from people that have passed away. Literally Vlad TV and most other freaking publications go and do this or create some type of like playlist so you can remember the artist. Like, come on now. I say this all to say, Logic then goes to respond to Joe Budden, essentially trolling Joe. It's just wild to me because essentially, if you listen to his most recent album, College Park, even his album Vinyl Days, Logic is in like a great space. He came back from retirement. Obviously, we knew it wasn't going to last too long. And he's dropping music that he wants to drop. And I'm kind of liking the vibes that he's given us on these last two projects. Vinyl Days back last year, and now College Park he put out a few weeks ago. No one's really talking about it, but I'm sitting here listening to a couple songs. A song with him and Joey Badass. He has a couple others that I can't think of off the top of my head that I'm like, these are some good songs that people are just sleeping on. And I think it's because there's some like overall hate that Logic gets for no reason. This was back when, Rory and Mal left Joe Budden Podcast. Then they went and did their own interview with Logic. And that was probably like 2 hours long, I believe. And I really enjoyed that interview. It was just very chill, relaxed, getting Logic's views, getting his thoughts. And that interview kind of made me even more of a fan of Logic than listening to his actual like music. Like that really, and I really liked what Rory and Maul did, where they're sitting here like, we had Joe with some wild takes on the podcast. We didn't necessarily agree with it. That's what we had to do at the time. But we really rock with Logic. Let's chop it up and talk about it. All that stuff. Now, I say this all to say, this beef that Logic and Joe Budden have, it's really pointless. And literally, I think Joe just creates this ongoing beef and issue just to like have something to talk about, to stay relevant and keep us like engaged. Oh shoot, Joe's going at Logic. This happens like once a year, or if not once a year, every other year. And I gotta say, the cover of "It Was a Good Day" that Logic did, one, it was not needed, and two, it was just weird. O'Shea Jackson even like commented jokingly where he's like, "Yo, Logic, like you can do a song, but if I ever hear you talk about my mom, making a joke about it, because it's kind of weird. Because Ice Cube's talking about his girl at the time. It's just a weird cover to pick and change it up like that. But it is what it is. At the end of the day, it makes no sense, and I kind of feel like at this point, Logic coming back from retirement, dropping projects, and just being in, I feel like, a better space than where he was at the beginning of his career, maybe even the middle of his career, and trying to figure out what type of person and artist he is. He's in a way bigger and better space now versus where he was in the earlier stages. And sitting here and feeding into Joe, trying to get clicks and views from all of us, I wouldn't do it personally, but I can't stop Logic. That's kind of my views going through all this, giving you a rundown on the past history from where the beef started, where we are now. Joe talking about on the podcast, he's the worst rapper to ever grace the mic, stop promising your fans things, blah, blah, blah. It's just, it's wild. And at this point, if I was Logic, unless you're going to make a diss record at Joe, and I don't know if I see that happening, and I doubt Joe would respond because Joe's going to be like, oh, I'm too big, I'm in retirement, I'm not doing that, he's not worth my time, all that BS. At this point, if I was Logic, I would just ignore Joe. He's just a troll on the side. What's the point? Joe's irrelevant. He's just an old man sitting on his stoop giving his thoughts and comments on different things. And Logic is out here actually doing what he wants to do and put out these projects that he's enjoying with these great artists. I don't know. That's just my take with it all. If you feel differently or have any additional thoughts, maybe I'm forgetting something as I'm going throughout this history and everything, drop it down below in the comments. Love to hear everyone's thoughts. I just feel like overall this beef, this back and forth between Logic and Joe is really just pointless. Joe's going to continue doing it because that's just the type of person Joe is, especially with the podcast and trying to bring more revenue and views to that whole thing that he's got going on. Logic more so is just out here living his life, having freaking another kid, and just being a dad, making music, like what you would envision a lot of rappers would want to have. Just a chill life, making money, being a dad, creating the content that you want, that type of goal. With that being said, as always, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.